Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Investor Frame. I'm Paul Sparks here with one of my good friends, Chandler Saine. Chandler is a 23-year-old who is he's absolutely crushing it right now. He runs a 32-person team out of Atlanta, and they're going to gross about $2.5 million this year. So he's sort of demonstrated his ability not only to run a successful business, but now he's got a coaching program called Level Up, where he helps other business owners, entrepreneurs who are in the 1 to 3 deal range, help them go to the next level and get to 7 figures in his business. So it's awesome to have you here, Chandler.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me on. You hit me up as soon as I got back in the States. I've
been dying to get this interview in for a while now.
Yeah,
so
well,
you've been out of town for a long time.
I lived. So if you don't know, I lived in South America for 3 months. It was fun.
Man, you got such a cool background. You were a college dropout.
Yep.
You were a wrestler. Now you're an ultra marathon runner. And then for the last, however many months, you were running around South America, still running all these businesses, still running this coaching program. So I'm dying to know, man, how were you able to go from, college dropout into this role of real estate investor, business owner, and now mentor at such an early age?
Yeah. So, we can start anywhere, but I'll start with this. It looks like it's awesome being able to travel everywhere, but man, I'm ready for a break. I'm ready just to chill in one spot for a minute because just for example, I was in Atlanta yesterday and I flew back here. So I woke up at
on Southwest?
No, on Delta. On Delta, I got to stay loyal. I woke up at 7 o'clock, worked until literally 11 p.m. on the plane the whole way, got here at midnight, drove my car in the snow to Denver, slept 3 hours, woke up and did it again. So it's always a grind. So it's not as glamorous as you think, but it is a life that is super fun. I'm not gonna lie. But to answer your question about how do we get here, there's no way we'd be doing what we're doing, or I'd be doing what I'm doing without great people. That's number one. As far as the education program, I spend 10 hours a week tops on that, and then 40, 50 hours a week on the real estate company. And it all kind of started, for me, how I got into real estate was I was actually doing landscaping with my dad. So I was doing some appointments, running crews, doing landscape construction type work. So, cutting grass, building retaining walls, backyard remodels.
You were doing all that?
Yeah. So I was the back. I was managing some people. I did some marketing stuff for them. And I was I hate my life. So I think at this time I was 20. So I was dude, this sucks. Or I just turned 20. This sucks. And I hate working that hard outside. So I was there's got to be a better way to do it. Obviously, I knew Gino. Gino was wholesaling. I actually lived with him at the time, but my dad wanted me to come and help him grow his company, whatever. So I went and did that. But I found this random course online. It was a digital marketing guy, I did 100K in e-com. Obviously, he probably grossed 10K or 15K. So I thought it was really cool. So I paid him $3,500 or $3,000, something like that. And I never did anything because I got an idea for a business. I called Gino up and it was a marketing thing, sell leads for money. Long story short, Gino was dude, come do that for me. That sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. At the time, Gino was doing probably around 1 or 2 deals a month. I come in, we basically went from doing 1 or 2 to doing 80 to 100K within 6 months in a month. So we hit, I think I came in June 2020, and we went from doing, like I said, 30, 40K a month to we did 100K a month in 4 months.
Wow.
So just because I was able to blow up the amount of leads we had and train appointment setters and all this kind of stuff. But anyways, so we started there, and then we've obviously grown the team through hiring great people through our network. That's one thing we've been pretty lucky with, is knowing a lot of other high achievers, like you pointed. I wrestled at a high level. Gino was a great baseball player, so we know a lot of other super successful people. So we just kind of picked them out and brought them on, and they started crushing it. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges that go with it, but throughout doing that, we realized we have a pretty unique situation to where we're 22, 23 at the time. We were probably 22 when we realized it. And we're doing this pretty awesome thing. We're doing all these deals. We're have a pretty awesome business. We are fairly hands off from the day to day. I feel we could do a lot for the younger generation in wholesaling or just real estate in general, because we're not only going to wholesale, we just added in, we're going to start doing commercial deals and bigger portfolio stuff too coming in the future that we're going to start like Q1 this year. So anyways, we were like, well, we have a really unique opportunity to take all these 20 to 25 year olds that no one else is servicing and give them all the knowledge we've gotten from older people and bring it down and be able to relate to them.
Yeah.
So we started doing that. Actually, I just, this random guy messaged me. He wasn't that random. He was we had a call center too at a time, just classic entrepreneur things, just going to build other
Trying
business.
to do too many things at once.
Yeah. And anyways, he was one of the clients. He like called me and was like, hey, could you mentor me? Just like 1 hour a week, something like that. And I was like, I just turned 23. I'm like, I guess, sure. And he was doing like $30K a month, which is pretty reputable or pretty solid. And then within 5 months of me meeting with him every week, he did 135K in his month. And it's just from him doing what I said. So I was like, Gino, we should do this. Like, because we closed the shop on the call center and the marketing company because our operator like wanted to go do something else. And so we started doing it. We just launched it out as like fun. We've built up like 15 people and just like by putting on our story like a handful of times. And then we hired an operator, Ryan, super solid guy. And he came in and we have 45 members now. And like since we hired him, it's been 6 months and we've spent $0 on marketing.
Power of social media, right?
Power of social media, power of like brand giving and just like, I think being super transparent and like relatable.
And actually having success.
Yeah, like, well, that's like the thing too, is like, I'm not trying to promote us too much, but like we did a study is like out of like 20 people sent us, there's 19 people I think, sent us their information. We're making on average, everyone another $17,000 a month just from being in our program. Wow. And obviously like that makes a big difference. So,
I mean, it's a huge testament to a couple things and I want to kind of pull apart. You've done something that most aspire to do. They get in this business and I mean, let's face it, like the wholesaling business attracts a lot of get rich quick people, right? So they see someone posting, made this $50,000 check and $75,000 check. I mean, even smaller checks, right? Yeah. But they say, well, I want to figure out how to do that. But there's this huge gap from getting a deal or two, or maybe even 1 to 2 or 3. I mean, that's the size of my business. We do a couple deals a month.
Big deals though.
Well, they're bigger, but I mean, the point is that in order to go from that, let's call it the CG Select level, because that's, you and I met in Collective Genius Select, which is the less than 100 deals a year, let's just say. And now you're doing significantly more volume and you're teaching people how to do this. And again, it's not smoke and mirrors. Like you've got the data to show the track record, to show the success. You've got the people that can, vouch for that and have had the success for themselves. And so what I really want to know is like, how the heck did you do that in such a short amount of time? It's systems based, right? And I know that's your expertise. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So number one is education is the most important thing ever. If we didn't spend, like in the last 2 years combined, we've spent, I haven't looked at the P&L this year, but $220,000 on education. So yeah, sure. Like, you could say like that's like, these pay for years of education. So like we're talking to people who are doing 100 deals a month on a weekly basis and we have their phone numbers. We're friends with them. Like they're like our friends because we've paid to be in rooms with them. We built relationships with them. And because we have a problem, they obviously have the solution because they've done exactly what we want to do. So just like, hey, how'd you do this? They show you, okay, I'm just going to go do it. Right. And then you just start chopping away. And eventually you chop away long enough and you kind of get to where you want to go.
What were some of the mentors that you've worked with in the past? Yeah.
So I would say probably there's a few things that really stand out to me. Is one, we did Tiffany High, their virtual 1K like coaching class. This is actually kind of what inspired us to do. We did one ourselves for some other people, but we did that 2021 January. And that was like, they showed us their entire inside of their business. That was one of the most pivotal things. Steve Trang, the sales training, spectacular stuff. I would say the other super, super impactful person was Ren Bartlett. Yeah. Obviously, we mentored with him for like 14 or 15 months. Just took us from like being average operators to just, obviously we're not like amazing because there's way higher, like it depends on who you compare it to, right? But we got 10 times as good just from being with Ren. And it made us understand the way the business works. It made us understand how to grow and drive efficiencies and run a sales team and just do all the things that you need to do. But I think a lot of it too comes from, because everyone can have a coach and tell them exactly what to do. Like we do it all the time. And the people who have success are the ones where we tell them what to do. They go and they just start doing it. And they actually just take action, to be honest. And I think another piece of it as well, I know I have it, and I know Gino has it, and plenty of other people who are successful have it, is the way I define like being able to get success, like be able to do whatever you want. Like this is how I did it when I wrestled. So just a little bit of backstory is I wrestled for 4 years in high school. My freshman year was my first year. Told my coach I want to be a state champion. He sat down with me. He said, all right, you want to do it? Let's map out exactly what to do. So he mapped out, he said, if you do this every week, every month, every year, and you hit these marks along the way, you'll have a good chance of making it happen. And then it came true. Yeah. So basically what I broke down in my head, I was like, at the time I was like 17. I realized this when I was probably like 20. Of like, all it is just figuring out where you want to go, determining where you're at right now, and then just like figuring out the steps to bridge the gap. And it's pretty simple when you bridge the gap and get that clarity. You're like, the first thing I need to do is this, and you chop away at it. Then you're like, all right, what's the next thing to do? This, chop away at it. And I think just putting your head down and grinding.
I mean, and you're in the whale club, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're very familiar with this term solvable problem. Yep. And that's exactly what you're describing is it's most of the time it's not defining the variables in order to actually create positive momentum, right? You don't know where you're going. Yep. You don't know where you're starting. And so we just start taking steps and we don't really know which direction we're heading. We're just kind of doing things because we're erring on the side of progress, but it doesn't necessarily, lead us to the right place. And there's another thing that you mentioned too about, just education and the path has already been forged. Like the best part about this business is it's been done hundreds and hundreds of times.
So many times.
So we have a phrase that we say as part of the certainty operating system is like, we only want to innovate where we differentiate.
I like that.
And so because you didn't differentiate in the way that Tiffany High ran her business or the way that Ren Bartlett's like, no, just do it this way, or you're a wrestling coach. And you have I would even just say like humility to be able to say, I'm just going to do exactly what's already been done, do it that way, and then find ways to add differentiators along the way. You don't differentiate in the process. No. You don't differentiate in how you cold call people. You don't differentiate in marketing and sales and all these things. The business is literally done for you. If you can just be humble enough to say like, stop trying to inject your ideas into it. Just do it the way it works. Then you can start differentiating in small ways.
Yeah. And that's like the most important piece because like, we do the same process as a lot of people. Like even Ren told us like a lot of different things with like the sales process and Steve and all these other people, but you take it and you're like, okay, this is how I'm going to put my twist on it. And it works here, but I'm going to say it this way, or I'm going to use these words or whatever it is. And like, I think like one of the big things that people like kind of sleep on, and I'm a big data geek, so I love just looking at numbers and like seeing trends. That's like one of my like things that I feel like I'm pretty gifted at naturally. Yeah. Is just like going through and looking, like for example, like the differentiator, like let's call it appointment setting for like lead management, is like looking at all the different opportunities that we have, and then like seeing what sticks to the wall. And like we have all these things that like like. In marketing, like you're doing all these different lists, you're doing all these different people, but just like throw stuff against the wall and then analyze what sticks, and then stop doing all the stuff that doesn't stick to the wall, and then just keep doing more of what is sticking, like 80-20 kind of rule. And it's pretty simple. You usually get more success when you do more of what works. So I think a lot of like that's for me. I don't see a lot of people doing that. I mean,
and let's talk about why that is.
Yeah.
Because, so we have an acronym there's a couple things that are coming to mind right now. We have an acronym CASE that we talk about in the Whale Club. Collect, analyze, strategize, execute.
Yeah.
But the problem is that most of us entrepreneurs, we're high quick starts, which means like, we don't want to collect and analyze the data. We just want to jump right to strategize and execute. I got this idea, guys. Here's what we're going to do. But what I think, because you're such a data focused entrepreneur, you do a very good job of collecting the data. And anytime you're doing something new, we typically don't have a lot of data. So in order to get data, what we say as part of the certainty operating system is we want a micro step. Like take small steps, and I have another coach that calls it soft offense. Like lightly press on things. You know, if you're playing Jenga, let's say, you don't just walk up to that Jenga and just mash one of them in, right? You kind of press on a couple of them, you see which one gives, but as entrepreneurs, we get this idea and we're like, this is what we're going to do. But we really don't have the data to support that. We haven't really analyzed it, you know, with all the other options out there. And we take these massive steps. And like what is so apparent about what you've done is you don't do that. You collect the data and you take small micro steps, like you said, and you see what gives, and then we'll choose that option. We'll go in that direction.
Well, it's like what you're saying. Like, it's like if you're driving blind, are you going to go fast? No, you're going to go super slow. So like without data, you're driving blind. So like you have to everyone starts driving blind no matter what. So you have to start. Like that's number one. You got to, like what you said, soft offense. I like that because you're going slow. You're diving into it, but then you're like every time you get in a situation, you learn from it, and then you analyze it, you strategize, and you re-execute like what you learned. It's like for wrestling, like every single time I'd have a match, I'd literally just go watch my match. Okay, even if I won, here's where I didn't look. I was sloppy. Okay, I'm gonna go watch someone else's match who's way better than me. Oh, they got in the same situation. Here's what they did. Oh, they moved their shoulder. Okay, now in practice, I go and execute it. And then the match, I dominate. And every single match, like, you know, we wrestle 60 matches a year in high school. So like when 60 matches a year, you get better, and most people never do anything. Like, no wonder like you are exponentially growing versus everyone else. Like, so it's like if every single like for another thing, it's like something we built out and like the appointment setting is like looking at every single internal list. Like, was it a hot follow-up? Was it a cold follow-up? Was it like a lead that was just that we never contacted and we just called it? Like, where did all the appointments come from? And if you can just analyze where everything's coming from, all your opportunity, then you know where to double down on resources because you can execute a better strategy. So like because of that, we know that like this is actually not from our data. This is the perks of having mentors and education, like other people in the education realm. But they're losing like the majority of their deals that they're losing to the marketplace was in unqualified. This is just for real estate specifics people. So like they're dead leads, where they lost like 60 to 70% of all the competitor deals. So what do? Because they had the data, they made a aggressive direct mail campaign to those specific people. And then now they're doing a lot of deals from it. And they spent a small amount of money to get a massive return just because they had this small piece of data that allowed them to make a great decision. And I think like what you're saying is like, you got to do something in order to be able to analyze it. Because if you don't do anything, there's nothing to analyze. But if you don't analyze, there's nothing to strategize, or there's nothing to make a strategy off of.
That's right. But entrepreneurs, they're like, let's just go for it.
Oh yeah. Anyways.
Man, I can't tell you, my first couple of years in business, I just scaled a bunch of chaos because that was what I was
Well, it's easy to do.
Doing.
It's fun too.
Yeah.
It's like such an adrenaline rush.
It really is. You're just like, let's just try it. Yeah. Let's just do this.
Yeah.
And so if you want, one of the things that you, I would say, specialize in is one, being able to demonstrate in your own business how to first build reliability into the system, predictability. Then you scaled it to a point where you're now doing $2.5 million in profit this year, which is freaking awesome at 23.
Appreciate it.
I mean, at any age, I don't care what age you're at, like that's impressive. But now what you do is you help other people who want to grow a business and step out of the day-to-day. But like, you can't do that without a predictable, reliable business, right?
Yeah, exactly. You should, I mean, I call it like a manufacturing line for our business. Like you put, there's a book called The Goal that I read, recommended by Ren. But basically it's like you put raw goods in and you get money out, right? So our raw goods are leads, and then that produces like a qualified lead, like someone who you verified on the phone that has a house to sell. And then that produces an appointment. Then that produces an offer. That produces a contract. And then it produces a sold deal and revenue, right?
Yeah.
And like, if you know how each piece of the puzzle goes across, and then if you know who contributes to what part of the puzzle, and then what things they do that contribute to their part of the puzzle, then it becomes like really easy. Like you can just look at data and be like, all right, well, like for something simple, like there's calls, conversations, and appointments for like a caller, right? Conversation is just when they connect to someone and they talk to them. So if I know that the conversation to appointment percentage, like there is off from baseline, like below baseline, then I know that they either one, need more training, or two, they aren't understanding exactly the criteria of what is an appointment, which would mean they need more training, or they just are calling the wrong people. Like they might just be talking to the worst leads in the system.
That's right.
So then you can kind of easily tactically like hit the lowest hanging fruit, and then you can be more efficient with your time too.
So what do you see as like the biggest, or maybe top couple biggest leaks in most businesses' buckets? Because you've had this unique perspective now where you're looking inside of everyone's businesses, and you can point out like, oh, so what are you seeing? What are the biggest leaks that most people have?
Yeah, it depends on the kind of stage they're in. If they're like a solo, like, because there's different personalities, so it gets pretty complex. I'll keep it kind of like high level, but if they're like small and are doing deals on their own, usually they just don't have the bandwidth to do any more. Like they're capped out, they're like running on their RPM meters, like maxed out in the red, they're about to die, and they come to you and they're like are freaking out. They just need like an executive assistant. That'll free up like so much of their time. Then they can just kind of delegate all the little things, and they'll start doing another deal a month just from that. If they have a team, usually the team is not as good as it needs to be. So it's usually like internal conversion. And the two biggest areas I would say would be contacting their leads. So like going from
consistency.
Yeah, like just like, well, even consistency. Like I feel like we were pretty consistent, but like it's more of strategy. So for example, like a lead comes in, we call it like a net lead, someone who, when it comes into our system, like a salesperson talks to them on the phone, like a lead manager, an appointment setter. And we were contacting 40% of our leads. 40% of our leads we were talking to. That means we were wasting 60%. Like they were just never getting spoken to. And they had texted us back, told us on a cold call, called a TV lead, obviously saying they're interested in selling. So what we did was we just made a better strategy on how to contact those people. And then now we're at 70% of the leads are contacted. Or actually it's 90% are contacted, but 70% are qualified leads. So when you over double the amount of leads you contact, you double your deals. Yeah. If everything works down the line. So just doing something small like that, it's typically a huge one. It's just a simple process. And then the next one would just be like them converting appointments into contracts, which is like a consistent sales process, which is one of the things that we do pretty well at, I believe.
So do you focus more on the systems, like the traditional COO, and Gino does more of the CEO, sales training, sales manager stuff, or how do you guys handle that?
So the way we have it split right now is Gino's doing acquisitions. So like getting contracts signed, he's running that department. We have 4 acquisition guys, and then Gino's running it. And then he's doing finance. And then I'm doing the dispo part. So I'm running a dispo team right now. We're looking to hire a 3rd dispo rep. But basically, like we had no systems, no processes, nothing on that side. So I've spent the last 3 months being very active in that to just fix it, basically. And I'm almost done, thankfully. So I'm glad to be out of that. But I'm doing all the sales training, everything in that. And then also I run the education company, so I'm the CEO of that.
Nice.
But technically still in the CEO role of Ferocity, so of the wholesale company.
Man.
So, I mean, to answer your question, like we have a marketing director, appointment setting director, lead management director, and then we have like a financial consultant who like basically is like kind of our CFO. He just like manages everything. And then in the education company, we have Ryan, who's acts more like a chief sales officer, but he's like the COO role title. So
I mean, you know, we talk about case in points. Like you are the case in point in my mind for recapturing and reallocating resources. You know, as small business owners, we're not Fortune 500 companies. We don't have just unlimited budgets, unlimited resources to go hire and whatever. And so there's a couple things that I kind of want to reiterate is, first of all, this business has been done hundreds of times. So it's a matter of getting around the right people and getting the right education to learn how to not make the same mistakes others have made. And really like most of this business, you're not differentiating between most other businesses. Yeah, your marketing might be a little different. Your messaging might be a little different. You can always add your sort of flavor to things.
Yep.
But what you've done so well is just take what's worked for others, implement it. And now what you do is you help others recognize where they can't, everybody walks around with their own biases, right? And it's hard to see these biases because you don't even realize that they're there.
Yep.
But you've gotten really good at being like, no, there's a leak right here. And I know that because I've collected the data. You may not be able to see it because of the story that you're telling yourself. But like, that's where you're kind of hitting your stride right now, it seems like.
Yeah, I would agree. So I think there's two things. Like one, you hit on the execution point, and two, just talking about like pulling yourself back from the day to day. So I'll hit on the first part is like, I want to hit on both these, so don't let me forget, because I might. But the first part is like the execution. So there's like tiers of execution, and I think that taking what, anyone can be given the blueprint.
Yeah.
Not everyone can do the blueprint.
That's right.
And the reason is because of the degree of execution that everyone can put forth. And even like with past directors we've had that, didn't work out or whatever it might be, you give them a project and it just doesn't work. And it's like, why doesn't it work? You did the right things. It's just because sometimes like the details aren't executed as good, the systems aren't as tight, the people aren't trained up, and like just things aren't done as well. So I think like there's just degrees of execution that you can really start to see once you start to delegate these bigger projects to other people and just realize that like, oh shoot, like it takes a lot of time to do these things really well. And it takes a pretty good skill set.
Well, how does leadership play in with that and communication?
Yeah, and that's exactly like a big thing. So one thing that happened just from someone who we had to demote from a director role was we would have a project and it would go on for a week and like the timelines wouldn't be hit. And, of course, like as a leader, like I'm reaching out and like seeing if I can help and like when things are all good, but then there's no communication that whenever we get to the deadline, things are not good. Like there's all these problems that have been backlogged for months, weeks, whatever it is, and there's been nothing that comes forward. So just setting a clear expectation and like trying to get that communication path opened faster. And then also like some people just get lazy and like need a kick in the butt. Like everyone does, like myself, Gino, I'm sure you do sometimes, like even if it's your wife.
All the time.
Yeah. It's like you get distracted and like everyone needs that accountability, which is just the reminder of like, hey, you committed to this, like, and you're not fulfilling your commitment right now. Like why not? And like, if it's the right person, if they have the right mindset and they're part of your core values and all that, then they're just going to go and take care of it. Like I had a conversation the other day, sales rep missed their numbers by 4 calls. And I was like, you knew you were going to miss your numbers by 4 calls. Like it was like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, you logged off and you're 4 calls short and you show up to the meeting in the morning to look at our numbers and your numbers are red. And like on our stop report, we read them red or green if they're good or if they meet it or don't meet it. And I'm like, do you not think you could have made 4 more calls, like just to have the principle of having your numbers being green? And she's like, yeah, you're right. I should have done it. I just got distracted and it was my fault, whatever. And like just something simple as that, like now the numbers are green every time. And you're gonna have to recalibrate people all the time. And it's one of the things that Ren taught us. I would say he taught us more than anyone else we've been with is just the accountability, the leadership, and like just asking, like just holding the line on the level of commitment, like the commitment they made to you. So
yeah, it's important. That's something I've got a lot of opportunity to improve on in my business because, it's just hard to have those conversations.
It's uncomfortable.
Right?
Yeah.
And the title of this show is called The Investor Frame. And the Investor Frame says, knowing what I know now, would I choose to opt into this situation? And I think that what you're saying right now is perfect demonstration of that because you're going to have employees or contractors or let's say marketing vendors that aren't always going to perform exactly how you want them to. So the question really is, well, knowing what I know now, would I continue to opt into this situation? Would I continue to hire to keep this employee or to keep this vendor? And the question is like, what needs to change sometimes in order to make that so? It doesn't mean just because somebody has a bad month that you just let them go. That's not what a leader does.
Yeah.
You know, so you ask the investor frame, well, knowing what I know now, would I keep this person? And the answer is like, well, what needs to change in order to make that happen? And a lot of times it's us as leaders. You have to realize, I think I'm sort of realizing this as I'm saying this out loud. It's like, it's not easy to be a leader.
No.
And it's not easy to hold people accountable. In fact, it's really easy to just let things slide. But that's what makes a good leader, is holding the line. I like how you said that.
Yeah, like Jocko Willink talks about it all the time in the dichotomy of leadership and extreme ownership. And then Tony Robbins talks about it all the time. He's like, the lowest standard that you accept is the standard that everyone's going to fall to. And like, to me, that hits hard. And I think about it like probably weekly, because I'm like, you got to remind yourself over and over again. And I look at Chick-fil-A, and like this, I don't even know. I had a Chick-fil-A app, and I remember I was like almost close to the rewards. And this is why I started thinking about it. I was like, dude, I literally go to Chick-fil-A. I sit in my car in the parking lot. I click order my chicken sandwich, my French fries. I walk inside, they hand it to me. I walk out, and it's 30 seconds. And I'm like, that's incredible. Yeah. So I'm like, they do something that they run a better business than probably anyone. Like, I don't know, maybe it's a bold statement, maybe anyone in the country. I don't know, but that seems to be the title.
I'll defend that forever, because Chick-fil-A is absolutely the best fast food restaurant in the world.
It's so good. But to what I'm saying is like their standard is so high. Yeah. Like even if they hire someone who's a high school kid, it's going to be the best high school kid. He's going to go through like 2-3 interviews, and can't have tattoos, got to have straight A's, got to do extracurriculars. Best person there is. And like they don't tolerate anything different, you know? Yeah. So it's like, it really just stands out. It's like just the lowest thing you accept is what people will fall to. And it's pretty obvious when you just raise your standards, people raise up beside you. Yeah. Or they leave, which is kind of part of what, you know, you're talking about, is like some people just can't keep up or don't want to raise and better themselves, which is why one of our core values is a growth mindset. And like, if you don't want to get better, hey, it's okay. Like, it's not a problem, but you're not going to be a fit for us. Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like you've accomplished your goal around financial certainty. You're able to go travel, and yeah, it's hard, right? It's still a lot of work, and it's not quite as glamorous as everybody makes it sound. Yeah. It's still fun though. Yeah. Right. So, you know, what is next for you? What is your solvable problem? Because we know that it seems like you got to where you wanted to get to. Where are you going now? What's next? Yeah. So I don't have like a specific answer. I mean, I guess I can give you something specific, but I want to give two things. Is one, we're getting into commercial. Like that's where you, at least my opinion, the best place to be in real estate. If you look at who makes the most money, people who do the biggest deals. So we're going to start doing bigger deals. That's where we're headed next. And obviously like the education program, it's just, you know, growing into a more well-rounded real estate company is going to make a more well-rounded education company, and then that's going to be able to teach the same people to do exactly the same path we did. Because I believe that I'm going to go down the best path that there is for people who want to do something similar to me, which have freedom, have flexibility, and then make money. I mean, everyone likes to make money. But to what you're saying is about what is next, is I think that's a slippery slope, because I made the goal, like when I was, like I said, in high school, so I made my goal to be a state champion. I became a state champion, and I remember like I got my hand raised on the mat, and I'm sitting there, I'm like expecting to be like overcome with emotion. And I'm literally just sitting there, I'm like almost disappointed, because I'm like, this is over and this is all it feels like. It's like, this was not even my favorite moment from the year, from the journey. And it was really like kind of tough, because I went and wrestled in college my freshman year, and I had no goal. And I was just kind of going and doing my own thing. And I realized that the goal is not some big thing. It's not a number, like for me personally, for my life, for fulfillment, for happiness. It's more about progress and always getting better. So whether that's getting better as, you know, at relationships, whether it's getting better as a business owner, whether it's getting better as a runner, whatever it is, I just want to be making progress. Yeah. And that's the only way where I can see there's no end, and you don't have to make a new goal. You just can pivot what you're trying to progress in. Yeah. Well, and self-improvement. So we have this phrase that, you know, you've probably heard us talk about, is we want to get closer without chasing more. And entrepreneurs are just
more is this endless loop.
It's like a dopamine hit.
It is, and it's never really satisfied, chasing more money or more this or more that. And so the whole concept around the solvable problem is, we're not just going to try to chase more and more and more endlessly. We want to get closer to the things that we actually want. One of the things that I have said, and maybe you resonate with this, is like part of my solvable problem is to play business as a sport.
I like that.
And what I mean by that is it's really more about self-improvement. Like, I enjoy the challenge of figuring out a new business. I enjoy the challenge of figuring out how to like change my behavior in order to accomplish something different. And it has a lot to do with what you're saying is like progress or growth, like personal progress, personal growth. But there is a trap that I think a lot of people fall into around just chasing more and bigger and, for the sake of it. Now, when you can recognize like, hey, I've got my financial kind of problem solved, you've built the lifestyle that you want to live. At a certain point, it's like more money doesn't really do it, but it doesn't mean that we need to like hang it up and go sit on a beach and drink Mai Tais all day. Like, I mean, that might be fun to do for, a couple weeks at a time, but I just don't ever see myself stopping playing this game because it's just so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that resonate with you?
100%. Like I always knew that like, I always knew I loved business just because like I would watch a lot of people. Like I was fascinated with like Jeff Bezos and like all these people from a young age. And like, this is like the life I always saw myself living. I didn't know it would happen so quick, but I guess that's what happens when you work hard. But business is so fun because like every day I wake up and I'm like, dude, I get to go and be around people I want to be around because they're all like-minded, have the same values and all that. And we get to go and accomplish some really cool things. Like whether it's, doing a bigger deal, whether it's doing more deals or growing a team, hiring better people. It's like, it's just fun because you're just figuring it out and you're like, you suck for a little while, then you get better and you're like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. Like, let's go suck at something else. Let's go figure it out. And like, just that in itself is just so fun. And also like the people who are in the entrepreneur space are generally the people who I'd want to hang out with. I couldn't imagine like not having only entrepreneur friends. Yeah. Because I can't really, like I go back, just like even simple, like going back home for Christmas, like it's hard to
find less and less in common with the people as you start going like this. And I mean, maybe they're improving, but not in the same way. It's hard to relate.
Yeah, it's hard to relate. It really is like it. But I mean, it's obviously it's your family, so you still like, there's a lot of other things that you can talk about and like relate on and whatever. But just from like a general, like now every time I meet someone, I like instantly am like, are you someone who I want to hang out with in my life more than one time, like more than the interaction we have right now? And it's like, you just get so like hard and judgmental on that and like strict on who you have in your life. The only people who I've ever met are people who are entrepreneurs pretty much. And for me personally, like I like entrepreneurs who like to do crazy stuff, like climb mountains and run ultra marathons. So it's a small niche.
You got another race coming up?
I actually do. Yeah. So, I'm going to do the Leadville 100 this year.
Nice. Yeah.
So
I can barely breathe anytime I'm up there.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be
just
hard.
Sitting around.
Yeah. If you want to come, August 19th, you can come on. You can stand there for 30 hours and watch me.
So funny story. We were camping up there one weekend and we stayed up really late and like we see these people running past us and we're like, what the hell is happening right now? And they're like, oh, it's the Leadville 100. So that was the first time I had heard about that because we were up, super late.
They're like in the middle of nowhere. Like
I'm like, what are these people doing?
Middle of night.
So that's cool.
It's gonna be interesting.
Are you got any ski trips planned?
I'm hoping to go ski this weekend. There's a bunch of snow up in Steamboat and Beaver Creek, so
I know it.
Go over there. I try to make it out like most weekends to go ski right now. But I'm going to Big Sky in February with some other guys. And then I'm looking to go to Jackson Hole too. So Jackson's great.
Yeah, we went right before COVID hit. We went to Jackson Hole. No, like this is part of what I'm trying to get closer to. My businesses are not as reliable as I'd like them to be. And I'm still spending a lot of time trying to build more reliability, recognizing that I scaled a bunch of chaos for the first 2 to 3 years of my business. And I'm like, God, I got to fix these problems. Yeah. So I am busy doing that right now
Yeah.
and trying to get back to what I should have done in the first place, which is why I love your story, because you didn't. I think a lot of times we talk about upside as if like there's so much upside in real estate, there's so much upside in crypto, you know, but really what we should be doing is not worrying about how to raise the ceiling. We want to raise the floor. We don't appreciate when bad things don't happen as business owners and humans in general.
Yeah.
And if you could just get rid of your worst months,
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's what we mean by raising the floor. And so I got caught in that trap of chasing more. I was only looking at the months we did really well
Yeah.
and not looking at trying to prevent the bad months from happening. How do we just like, if you could erase all the zeros across the board or the negatives across the board, where would you be? And I would have the business that I want. So yeah, so
there was like, I can't remember who did the presentation, but it was at Collective Genius in December, and it was just a graph of like self improvement, business improvement, whatever it was. But it's the same concept where they just showed like, here's where you are like when you get better like a week in a row, and then you have like a bad like 2 weeks.
Looks like
and then
this.
and like you maybe get net positive at the end of the year. But if you erase all the bad days, you're like 10 times higher. Like it's insane. So I think the same. I used to do day trading too, and that's what they talk about. But I got trapped in the same thing where, you know,
biases, right?
You lose like a lot of money at the time. Like I had like 15 grand and I lost like 4, and I was like, that hurts.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember, what was the thing I asked you to not let me forget? Do you remember?
Execution and
It was the other one. Do you remember?
we're not very
I literally remembered it when we started talking like 5 seconds ago about like some other topic. I remembered it, and then for whatever reason I just completely forgot.
You know, it's funny, and it's funny because we're like actually still doing this right now. I would normally say this off camera, but when I've been doing these podcasts over there, like I'm a note taker.
Yeah.
I write things down constantly, and so I've got my desk is a dry erase board.
Oh yeah, I like that.
So I can just speak to the camera and I can make notes and I can erase it and so I find like when I do this in person, I don't have my notebook, and so I'm like trying to hold these thoughts in my brain and try to come back to them, but it's not as easy as it sounds for me. I need to write things down.
No, it's the same. Like whenever we do podcasts too, because like I want to be engaged in like what you're saying or who the other, like the guest or like you or whatever. And then like the thing that I'm going to ask, and then you go on for a little bit longer. I'm like, dude, I have no idea what I was going to ask. Yeah. And it's like this like awkward pause. You're like, what are we going to do again? But yeah, so that's the joy of
it's the fun of like trying new things and
exactly.
Engaging and again, you're just such a testament to that, man. So I really appreciate you coming in and sharing your story. It's inspiring. I'm sure that others are also inspired by what you're doing. How can people connect with you if they want to learn more about how to get out of the day-to-day of their business, right? That's the goal of most entrepreneurs. You've done this successfully yourself, and you've helped so many others do that. Tell me about how people can find out more about you and how they can, get involved.
So Instagram is the best way. I'll say it to the camera. Instagram is the best way to find me. Just at Chandler Saine. Chandler is spelled like just normal, and then Saine, Saine. Just DM me. I check my DMs most days, and if I don't reply to you, you probably looked like a spammer. So.
Well, I'll make sure to put all that stuff in the show notes too, so you guys can get a hold of Chandler. But anyways, man, thanks for coming down and spending time with me. Everybody else, we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.